Hey guys, it's Mark here. Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm playing a cash game session at Final Table immediately after busting the $300 tournament in pretty brutal fashion. Without further ado, let's jump into the action. Alright, here I am at Final Table, signing up for the cash game. I buy in for $380 and I take my seat at the table. In this first hand, 7 of us are playing a 5-2 bump pot. Top flop comes 6-9-9 with 2 hearts, and bottom comes 7-5 king rainbow. I'm in the big blind with king king, queen 8-4 double suited. Not much for me on top, but I flop top set on bottom. Small blind checks me, I lead for 20, and I get called by middle position, button, and small blind. We go 4 ways to the turn, which comes to 4 of diamonds on top and the 6 of diamonds on bottom. Top card gives me the second nut flush draw, but it's pretty much irrelevant on a paired board. The bottom card is really interesting though, as I make the 8 high straight and I pick up the second nut flush draw there as well. Something to note is that 8-9 makes a better straight, but there's 2 9s already accounted for on top. I have an 8 in my hand, and I still have top set that can improve to a full house, so it's not a huge concern. The small blind leads for 15. At this point in the hand, I have the second nuts on bottom that can improve to the nuts. A very weak hand on top, although a king would give me the second nuts, so it's very likely I'll be chopping, and we multi-way. I think if I raise, I'll often end up heads up versus the best hand on top, and I won't make any more money. By just calling, I can get worse hands than mine on bottom to put money in the pot, so I just call. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out as the middle position player snap raises to 75 and the button and small blind fold. I won't be making more money, but I have a pretty easy call here. We go heads up to the river, which comes the deuce of hearts on top and the ace of diamonds on bottom. Not much changes on top, but I rivered the nut flush on bottom. I have an easy all-in shove for 248, and I'm not too surprised to see my opponent snap call. I didn't take note of their cards, but they have a boat on top, so we end up chopping. We're 8-handed in this one. Top board comes 5 ace 8 2 hearts, and bottom comes 10-6-5 rainbow. I'm under the gun with queen queen jack 6-6, so not much on top. I do flop second set on bottom. The blinds check to me, and I'm going to play this cautiously for now and check. Checks around to the cutoff, leads for 20. They get called by the button and small blind. I'm going to make the call. The middle position player and low jack also come along. We're going 6 ways to the turn, which comes to 5 of clubs on top and the 10 of diamonds on bottom. Not much changes on top, but I improve to a boat on bottom, 6s over 10s. The small blind decides to lead and go all in for 113. I'm the only player to make the call, so we go heads up to the river, which comes brick brick, and my opponent shows 2 8s for a full house on top, so we're going to chop. One more bomb pot before we switch to hold'em. In this one, we're playing double barrel, which is a high-low game. The pot is split between the best high hand and the best low hand on either board. So, for example, for the high hand, let's say you have the nut straight on top. If someone has a flush or a full house on bottom, you don't chop with them, you just lose the high portion of the pot. Also, for a board to have a possible low hand, there needs to be 3 cards, 8 or under. If there's no low possible on either board, then the best high hand scoops the entire pot. In this one, we join the action on the turn. Top board reads 6-4-7-9 2 spades. Bottom reads 4-7-8-2 2 hearts. Action checked around on the flop, and on this turn I lead for 40. I get called by the cutoff, big blind, and under the gun. I'm in the hijack with 10-8-6-5-5, so I've got the nut straight on top, which is the current nut high overall. There's a low possible on bottom, and my low is 2-4-5-6-7, which is not great. The middle position player comes along as well, so we go 5 ways to the river, which comes a disastrous 9 of hearts on top and a king of clubs on bottom. I may no longer have the nut high now that a full house is possible, especially in a 5-way pot, but action surprisingly checks around, and my straight is good for the high hand. The cutoff shows the nut low with ace 3. Interesting that they didn't choose to apply pressure, although I guess with no high hand they were possibly worried about getting quartered versus another nut low. So we're going to chop this one too. Alright, time for some hold'em, and what better hand to start than pocket aces under the gun. I open to 15 and I get called by the middle position player in the cutoff. Blinds get out of the way, so we go 3 ways to a flop of 3-8 jack rainbow. Super safe board for my hand. I don't need to c-bet big here. I continue for 25. Middle position player calls and the cutoff folds. Heads up to the turn, which comes to 6 of clubs. Another super safe card for me. I fire a second barrel for 60. Middle position raises to 200. Just for context, you can't tell from a vlog where the action is condensed, but the 3 hands I showed you happened over the course of like 2 hours. I've been super card dead in this session where I'm trying to recoup my 300 tournament loss, so I'm a little bit frustrated. What's more frustrating is that this player hasn't done anything out of line up to this point, while I appear to be playing super tight because, well, I just haven't been dealt anything even remotely playable. So it feels like they're targeting the kind of hand I have. So here I am, frustrated but patiently waiting for a spot, getting dealt aces, and facing a raise on the turn by a seemingly tight player on the board that, in my opinion, does not contain a lot of bluffs. I am in no state to fold aces at this point though, so after about 20 seconds I end up stubbornly jamming for 419 with very little fold equity, fully expecting to snap call by like a set of 8s or 3s, but the snap call does not come. My opponent goes into a deep tank, so I'm feeling pretty good about my hand. After about a minute of visible torture, my opponent says, which I really did not want to hear. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm about to get stacked and be down 700 for the day. My opponent then tanks for another minute and a half. I can see them going back and forth between calling and folding, calling and folding. I don't understand how they haven't called yet, if only a set of jacks beats them, especially for like 200 more. I can't believe I'm sitting there with aces and I'm like, please fold, please fold, please fold. Finally they ask,
so if I fold?
And I don't answer anything. I'm just staring at the board, not moving, trying not to give anything away. Another 30 seconds go by before they finally fold. I am really curious to know what they folded. I would be really surprised if they folded a set, but in any case, if they had the winning hand, I'm glad they folded. I take down a nice pot, and I'm on my way to breaking even for the day. In this one, there's a limp from under the gun, cutoff raises to 15, the small blind calls, and I look down at ace-king offsuit in the big blind. I 3-bet to 50, and the original raiser in the cutoff is the only player to make the call. Once again, going heads up against this player to a flop of Jack 7-10 rainbow. I've got a gut shot straight draw and 2 overs, so I c-bet for 40, and the cutoff makes the call. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. Holding the ace of diamonds, my opponent is not going to have many strong flush draws here with the exception of king queen, king jack, or queen jack of diamonds, so I think this is a good spot to apply pressure, but ultimately in game I opt for a check, and the cutoff bets 80. If I think an ace or a king gives me the winning hand, I have roughly 23% equity, and my opponent is giving me pot odds of 28. It's not the most profitable call in the long run, but this time, I decide to stick around. The river comes to 7 of diamonds, putting a 3rd diamond on board. This is why, in retrospect, I wish I had bet on the turn because I could fire again here and try to represent the nut flush. At this point in the hand, I decide to pretty much give up. I don't think I would be telling a very convincing story by betting here. The cutoff checks back and shows pocket 9s, and they're going to take it down. In this one, there are limps from under the gun and the cutoff before I look down at pocket 10s on the button. I raise to 15, and only the undergun player makes the call. I go heads up versus this player who's been one of the loosest at the table so far. The flop comes king, deuce, jack, 2 clubs. Under the gun checks to me. This is not a great flop for my hand, but a pretty good one for my range, and at this point I can get value from draws and probably some under pairs against this particular player. I c-bet for 20, and they make the call. The turn comes the 4 of hearts, and under the gun checks to me again. I debate between betting again and checking. Ultimately, I decide to pot control and check back. The river comes to 3 of hearts. We both check. They show Jack 6 of hearts, and they're going to take this one down. In this hand, we're 5-handed in a 5-2 bomb pot. Top flop comes Jack 6 Queen Rainbow. Bottom 4 Deuce 7 2 clubs. I'm in the small blind with Ace Jack 6-6-5, so I flop a set of 6s on top and an open-ended straight draw on bottom. Being first to act, I'm going to start things off with a check. Checks all the way to the low jack who bets 20. The button calls. I have an easy call, and the big blind comes along. We go 4 ways to the turn, which comes a deuce on top and a queen on bottom. Interesting turn on bottom because with the queen now on board and the jack in my hand, it makes it a little bit less likely that I'm up against a set of queens or jacks on top. That being said, I'm far from being nutted on either board, and this is a game of making the nuts, so I check again, and this time action checks around. The river comes a jack on top and a 7 of clubs on bottom, so I improve to a full house on top, jacks over 6s. I break out on bottom though, so once again this is a spot where I'm like, do I bet? Do I check? Again, I feel like when I have a very strong but non-nutted hand on one board and nothing on the other in a multi-way pot, I make more money by letting someone with a strong but worse hand than mine put money in the pot, as opposed to betting, allowing them to fold, and ending up only getting called by the winning hand on the other board and chop. So I check, the big blind bets 80, and I'm happy to see the button make the call. I call, and the big blind shows queen 7 for a full house on bottom. Button bucks their hand, and I make an extra 40 bucks on the river. Back to the hold'em streets, and this one there are 3 limps ahead of me before I look down at king jack off in the cutoff. I raise to 15 and I get called by under the gun, middle position, and hijack. We go 4 ways to a flop of 10, 4 jack rainbow. Action checks to me. With top pair, I c-bet for 40, which is a little bit too big, and unfortunately everybody folds. In this one I'm under the gun and I look down at pocket kings. Finally looking down at another premium in this long, card dead session. Let's try to win a big pot and make a profit for the day. I open to 15 and I get called by the button and big blind. We go 3 ways to a flop of queen, jack, ace. Big blind checks, I check, button bets 10, the big blind check raises to 30, and I fold. Fuck! We are now 8-handed in a 5-2 bomb pot, and top comes 3 king deuce 2 hearts, bottom comes 8 6 2 spades. I'm in the low jack and I look down at king jack 8 6 3. I flop top 2 pair on top and the virtual nuts on bottom. That being said, any card higher than an 8 on the turn or river could be disastrous for me, as someone could make a bigger full house. Since we're 8-handed, I think there's definitely some merit to betting in order to thin out the field a little bit, so I bet 30 and I get called by the hijack, button, big blind, and middle position player. That's a few calls too many for my liking. We're going 5 ways to the turn, which comes a 9 on top and a deuce on bottom. What a beautiful turn card for me. Action checks to me again. I still have the nuts on bottom and I still need to protect against overpairs. I've grinded for 7 hours in this card debt session. I'm 2/3 of the way to being break even for the day, and it looks like this is going to be the make or break hand of the session. I bet 120. To my surprise, all 4 players call. We're still 5 ways to the river, which comes to 7 of hearts on top. I pray to the poker gods, no overcard on bottom. Please, no overcard on bottom. It's the 5 of spades, let's go! Action checks to the middle position player, who shoves an entire rack worth of chips. I pause for a few seconds before making the call, and now the hijack goes well into the tank before folding. Button goes into the tank, and as more time passes, I make the horrible realization that there are 2 possible straight flushes on bottom, and we went 5 ways to the river. Fuck. Don't tell me I'm going to get stacked and end up down 700 for the day. I've been playing poker for close to 12 hours, fighting in this cash game to come out break even. Please don't let me get stacked. After what feels like an eternity, the button and big blind make the fold. There's $1,650 in the pot. In about 10 seconds, I'll either win $825 or lose my entire stack, unless my 2 pair is somewhat good on top. We go to showdown, and middle position shows ace 3 of hearts for the nut flush on top. No cooler for me, my full house is good, and I am now officially up for the day. As I mentioned before, I am more than 12 hours into this poker session. It's been a while since I played this long, and with all the emotional ups and downs of the day, I am drained. Still, when I pick up ace 10 offsuit in middle position, I'm going to open to 15, and the hijack is the only player to make the call. Going heads up against this loose player again to a flop of 5 jack 8 2 spades, I start things off with a check, and the hijack bets 15. Against this particular player, I think I'm going to peel the turn, so I make the call, and the turn comes to 4 of diamonds. I check. This time, the hijack checks back. The river comes to 10 of clubs, perfect. I hesitate between betting out and checking. I think this player is capable of firing out a bluff and maybe even value cutting themselves with the worst hand. For that reason, I check, and unfortunately they check back. I show my 10, and it's good. And with that, I decide to rack up my chips and head home. I was in for 380, out for 750, booking a profit of 370 bucks. Taking the tournament into account, that's a total profit of 60 bucks for the day. All right, so there you have it. What a brutal, long session this was. Happy in the end to walk away with a small profit after being stuck. Always a nice feeling. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck at the tables, and I'll catch you in the next one.